Today's episode is brought to you by Delaware Orthopedic Specialists. The birds are back, and you know what that means. Dr. Mesa joining the pod on a weekly basis, providing the best up-to-the-minute updates on all of our Eagles. Let's hope that we don't have too much to talk to him about with injured birds this season, but he and any of the other wonderful providers at DOS can talk to you about ending injury that you or a loved one have been dealing with for far too long. The only fellowship-trained surgery center here in the state of Delaware. Why would you trust anyone other than the specialists? Them being specialists means that they are specialized in each and every part of the body. So if you come in looking for a specific doctor for a specific part of the body, they've got you covered. They're going to hold your hand and walk you through every step of the process, and you're going to make sure that you're happy with all of your results. 302-655-9494 is how you get a hold of them on the phone, or head on over to delortho.com to schedule your appointment today. After they provide you with wonderful care, head on over to Google, give them a great review, and let them know that Talkin 215 sent you.
Welcome to Talkin 215, your go-to podcast for everything you need to know about Philly sports. Whether you bleed green, trust the process, fly with the Flyers, or fight with the Fightins, this is the place where we break down Broad Street. Jake, Sean, and Joey deep dive into the heart of Philly sports culture, breaking down games, roster moves, and sharing the stories that make the 215 truly legendary. So grab a cheesesteak, settle in, and let's get to Talkin 215. Now here's your host, Jake Biasado.
What is going on, everybody? For the first time since 2011, your Fightin' Phils are NL East champions. Gentlemen, we got the coach, we got Papa Sean, we got T-Bone, Tomahawk Steaks, and then our boy Chris from Philly Dawgs is going to be joining here shortly. Gentlemen, I want to start off. How old were you the last time the Phillies won the NL East?
I was just old enough to legally drink. 2011, I was 21. I graduated high school the same year the Phillies won the World Series, and the last time we had the highest win total, the last time we won the division, I was old enough to drink. So things have been lining up really well for me for the Phillies.
Hell yeah. No, I was 16. 16. I was driving, old enough to drive.
Yeah, I was 22. I had that whole Phillies run was like my whole college from 18 to 22. So it was a good time for sure. The Phillies being really good was like the birds weren't that great. So they were okay some of those years, but the Phillies kept things hyped up at Temple University around that time. You can best believe that.
There you go. Go Owls.
Yes.
Coach?
Why are you asking this question, man? What's the point of worrying about how old I was? 26, man.
All right.
26.
There you go. Well, Coach, but you're the most handsome looking out of all of us. For everybody watching on YouTube, seeing the clips, yeah, he's a good look. That's why he's never wearing sleeves. He's got to, let them pythons
again. Because
out.
I live in Florida, where if you step out of the front door, it's 138 degrees every second. I'm telling you.
And
yeah, man,
by the way,
10 degrees hotter when you get out there.
Speaking of which, I had to cancel my trip to Florida.
Oh yeah. I'm thinking about not going now too because of the hurricane that's coming.
Hurricanes that we decided today. I made an executive decision to cancel it. I was going to say to go for it on fourth down, but I'm not Nick Sirianni, so I made an executive decision.
No, exactly. You're punting it away. You're living to fight another down. You're just
exactly. I'm getting points.
Hey, now we just. Tommy Stakes was over at the house for the Talkin 215 poker night this past weekend. So he had the opportunity to see in the new Talkin 215 studios, the whole new setup and everything. So he knows it's not so bad. It's pretty sweet over here. Now we just got to convince him to make the cross country trip from Central Jersey back to Northern Delaware for a little Tommy Stakes Talkin 215 pregame show. Have him just watching the game here at the studio.
I'll tell you what. It was a great time. That is a far drive. It was a hike out there, but it's coming along well. Everybody, if everyone listening, the studio is coming along superbly. It's going to be top-notch stuff when it's all done.
No, we're looking forward to it. But look, we're sticking on the Phils real quick before we get too crazy into the Birds, because that was a wild game. Phils 2024 NL East champions. And how fitting is it that they are getting just trounced in the immediate game following them clinching the NL East? I mean, whenever you have Tyler Banks coming out to make a start, or Tanner Banks coming out to make a start, quickly gets relieved by ace Taijuan Walker, who then allows 6 runs to score. I think he only earned 3 of those runs because he inherited another 3. But I mean, Coach, you were saying it. The guy cannot get an out.
Nah, dude. There's no way that he can be on the postseason roster. There's just the best bunter in the history of bunting.
What a slide! What a slide by Stubbsy. We're gonna get our boy Dan to make a little clip of that right there, because that was a softball play. That was a slap bunt.
I don't think that was a slide. I think that was like a front flip. I don't know what that was.
And caught the little corner of the plate. I mean, that's what they got to do. Stubbsy getting it done. A guy that obviously I'm not overly high on.
Look, I'll say this about Stubbsy though, like, you're not going to find he's like the Britian Covey of the Phillies. I mean, just a guy who height, weight, speed does not belong in the major league, does not belong in the show. But you won't find anybody that prepares harder, that tries harder, that works harder, and that can be trusted more with the little details than him. That's my comparison right there, man. Like, just a guy that's like dependable and trustworthy, but you're not really expecting much out of either.
No.
He can miss the night.
Why was that so crazy? What was wrong with that? I want to know. Back it up. Let's hear your argument.
You're comparing him. He's a skinny white boy. That's where their comparisons end.
Okay, what did I say that was wrong? Refute it. What did I say that didn't make sense?
Like, yeah, they both try hard. Britton Covey produces. He actually gives you something. I mean, that Garrett Stubbs play is all you ever get out of him.
The 6 catches for 14 yards the other day, and we're comparing that to him.
I'm saying about his true position. His true position is punt returner, and he's a darn good punt returner.
Valuable. I think that's valuable. He's only really playing receiver because he's, because he injures. So
yeah,
that's really his increased production. I would say
returner, and he's a darn good punt returner.
I think he's a good returner.
He's very good. Sean, back me up here.
I don't know enough about Stubbs. Is he like a good something?
No, he's a part-time player that consistently just doesn't look like he belongs. It's like having Grant Calcaterra in as a blocker specifically. That's probably the best Eagles comparison.
Dan, put a poll question up. Dan, put a poll question up right now. Who does Garrett Stubbs remind you of on the Eagles? I need to know. Right now, who does Garrett Stubbs remind you of? My take is drop. No, my take is Britton Covey, and apparently that's the worst comparison in the history of mankind. So I want to know.
No, it's terrible. Again,
I want to know. I want to know what everybody else is saying. I would love to know what the comparison is.
I don't know enough about Stubbs because of the mixed reviews. Like, is he actually valuable or is he a vibes guy? Because I've heard many
vibes guy. That's it.
He's a backup that's asked to produce every once in a while, and he kind of falls short, or you constantly understand why he's a backup, and he just doesn't look like
a comparison. Then what's your comparison? I need it.
He brings vibe.
All I know is, I mean, that's probably closer. But all I know is that you want to talk about getting a guy off the bench or getting a guy that's not always in your starting rotation that consistently produces. That's our boy Chris over at Philly Dawgs. Chris, back on air for the first time in what feels like forever. How the hell are we?
I'm doing good, boys. How you guys doing?
I got a real bone to pick with you, Chris. You were nowhere to be seen the first couple weeks of the month when your Georgia Dogs were in the fucking doghouse. Okay, they have one good week, and all of a sudden, you're on the show again. You're alive.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
The timing does look a little sketchy, but Just been busy. You guys get it, right? But no, happy to hop back in as soon as fucking Jalen Carter has a good game. So that helps.
Can I defend the Dogs real quick though? Can I defend the Dogs real quick? And
Do it.
By all
defend
means.
the Dogs. And it's Sean, it's not something you're gonna think that I'm gonna say. I'll say this about Vic Fangio, he's a great coach, but guess what? The Dogs are coachable. For this young group to go on the road and have a game like that, it wasn't like they did anything flashy. You know what they did? They got down and dirty. They showed they had that dog in them. Nolan Smith setting the edge. He's not chasing sacks. He said, I'm just going to do this the whole game and set the edge because I don't want Kamara to beat us. Unselfish, coachable. He's on the field because that's what he's good at right now, is giving energy and supporting the run, where Bryce, Huff, and these other guys, they haven't done it. Josh Sweat, he's been inconsistent at it. Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis had maybe one of their best games as a tandem that we've ever seen. We saw Jordan Davis stunt, sack. We saw Carter dominate all game. This was a win they got because they were coachable and said, look, we haven't played up to our standard. Came out and did it. So that's all I want to see from a young group of guys. And I love these Dogs. I'll stand right by them.
Hell yeah, Tom.
Let me ask you guys.
Love
Let me
it.
ask you guys. Based on the last episode, we kind of said, Jordan Davis, I haven't heard your name called in forever. You might be a bust. I don't know what you're doing. And then we also said, is Dallas Goedert even in this offense? Is he even a top 10 tight end anymore? And then you see the groundwork that we laid from the previous episode to this one, right? So we'll touch on Dallas Goedert, but I want to ask you guys, all of you, because we all watch every game. Was that the best game Jordan Davis has played as an Eagle?
It's possible that a game of that magnitude.
And of course, the Saints starting center going out and played a big role in both of those twos. Monster game. But regardless though, I mean, the impact that interior defensive line had, I can't remember a single game where whether it was a run fit, a passing down, it didn't matter. They were going to take over that game. Yeah, and huge, ups to probably Vic Fangio more than anything. Just, having their edges set the edge, right? They said, listen, we've got good linebacker play, right? If we can just make sure that you have your man accountable, you're holding the edge, those guys are just going to swarm to the ball. And they swarm to the ball, right? So, I mean,
Covey.
You give them credit for being coachable, or give credit to the damn coach for actually changing the scheme up a little bit. A lot more 5-man fronts and just different responsibilities, even when there was a 4-man front. Zach Bond is a guy. He's a player, man.
Yeah.
Just give him a lane to run through.
Yeah. And the Covey, I mean, that's a dog that we don't have to mention because he's been there all year. He's been the best one out of all of them all year until the Saints game when, they all started playing. When they play together, not just the Georgia guys, but the whole D-line, when they're all in sync like that and working those fits and doing all the things they need to do to play the right way, all we need now is our offense to catch up. And that's the negative part about it, is that you got to get into the negatives. And that's, I think the offense is pressing a little bit. They're chasing things a little early in games. And I don't think it's necessary. I think if they just clean that up, and I'm hoping they will, but the defense is holding up their end. They're getting better by the game. Like you said, Sean, I want to give credit to the coach as well, but I want to say because they're young players, I'm saying that you can get your confidence broken when you have a start like they had, and they had a bad game and at home and they lose and they give up this big game-winning drive and they come back and bounce back like that in a building this team hasn't won in years, 17 years. You got to give credit to a defense that's willing to say, I'm going to swallow my pride. I'm going to do what the coach tells me to do, and I'm going to trust it, and we're going to win. So it's good to see these guys not going rogue, not getting discouraged, just staying the course early. And it's going to be the motto all season. Keep it in front of you. Keep everything in front of you. And I think seeing that in week 3, we got it.
No, I mean, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. I mean, all the time we think and talk about on this podcast, the best thing that a coach can do, the number one sign of intelligence is in a coach is their ability to adjust. And what we saw that Falcons game where we just did nothing against the run and even really got no pressure against the pass. So we had nothing to stop them from just dinking and dunking and driving down the field. And we were saying, like, you got to send 5. You got to send 5. Oh, look, you sent 5 4 times in the game. All 4 times you saw positive plays. And then, like Sean said, We had a lot of 5-man fronts. We had a lot of guys setting the edge. We had a lot of guys just going downfield and making impacts, and it made the game so much easier to allow your stars like Jalen Carter to have a big game, to allow your guys. I mean, Bryce Huff even set the edge. Like again, we talked about he has nothing on the stat sheet, but for only playing 18 snaps, I believe, he set the edge a couple of times. He was a little bit better, and you got to just let him slowly build that confidence back up in the team, and hopefully we're going to see just better and better play coming out of him.
And, I think that's a testament to the unselfish nature, right? Like one thing I realized about this Vic Fangio defense is, I said it before the season started, I don't think you're going to have a guy that has double-digit sacks on this team, but I think you're going to have multiple guys that have multiple pressures. And Bryce Huff, much maligned. Jahan Dotson, much maligned. These are two guys that haven't been producing on the box score and the stat sheets or whatever, but each of them did the little dirty work plays that helped win that game the other day. Bryce Huff setting the edge. I'm going to take on 2 defenders here so that my guy can come free. I'm going to set the edge so that Kamara has to bounce it back inside, and I know Jalen Carter's whooping the guard's ass. He's going to jump right into Jalen Carter for a loss. Jahan Dotson, I know I'm not the primary target on this, but I'm going to run this mesh route, this mesh concept so well that 3 guys are going to collide. And I'm going to do it to where I don't get OPI. I'm not going to touch him. I'm going to be smart
Marcus Hayes.
I mean, but think about that, guys. Like, those are guys that Jahan Dotson didn't have a catch on that play. Bryce Huff doesn't have a pressure or a tackle on that play. But them doing their jobs helps the team win. Not everybody can be a star. Not everybody can be Saquon rushing for 150 and 2 touchdowns, or Jalen Hurts putting up 3 touchdowns. Not everybody can do that. But if
not everybody can be
your little job, we're going to win a Super Bowl. And as long as everybody's on that same page, that's what I loved seeing, man. I really did.
Yep, absolutely. And I just wanted a quick mention before we move off the Bryce Huff topic specifically. Did you guys see what Vic Fangio said 5 days ago, last week, whatever? We're going to stick with Bryce Huff as the starter. To today, he said we're just going to have him mix in with the guys. And he said it was like the same plan. But last week, he confirmed we're going to stick with him as the starter. And now it's kind of mixing it up. What do you guys think of that? Do you think we're going to see less of him and more of a rotation and start seeing Bryce Huff snaps limited?
Yeah, I mean, you saw it just on the snap count alone. I got it right in front of me. He played 18 defensive snaps.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to Brandon Graham's 35, that's obviously one less than double the amount of snaps out of him. Like you're seeing them say like, hey man, until you can go ahead and do the stuff that we did see out of him, we saw him set the edge, we saw him take on his assignments. It's going to be like, hey, you're going to have to earn this again. And how refreshing is that? We're talking about Rob Thompson. Taijuan Walker is still pitching today because he's making so much damn money. How refreshing is it for them to pay this guy a ridiculous amount of money? And not saying it's not earned. Like, he had an incredible year last year with the Jets, but they paid him a ton of money. And if he was a Philly, he'd be forced into that role all damn season long. He'd be that square peg just getting pounded in that round hole. Phrasing, my apologies. And we'd just be sitting here thinking, can we just play somebody that's producing right now? Can we stop playing the guy that's paid? And Vic Fangio said, hey, man, I don't give a shit that we gave you 3 years, $51 million. You're not producing right now. You're going to have to earn that right. And they're just having the guys that are actually going out there doing stuff. It's really refreshing to me, just in a whole, not an Eagles thing, but a whole Philadelphia sports mindset, concept, all that together. Chris, I see you nodding your head.
Yeah. Because I've always talked about this about the Birds, it's the sunk cost fallacy. Just because you put a whole bunch of money into somebody, you don't just keep riding them. You got to know when to maybe pull away off those tracks, where the Phillies with Walker don't really know how to get away from that because they know they got so much money in the bank with him. But with the Eagles, Carson Wentz, James Bradbury, maybe Bryce Huff, you kind of throw them to the side, say, hey, look, we spent that money, but it's sunk cost. Move on. That's what you got to do.
Yeah. No,
I think it's tougher with a salary cap, right? Like, you have a little bit more, you gotta see that investment out a little bit longer with a salary cap. But I will say this, Tommy, to answer your question, if I'm picking up on the keys of what Fangio does, I think to answer your question with Bryce Huff and his snaps and his playing time, I think it's game to game, right? Like, you look at New Orleans, they were running all over teams, just Kamara, that games even, like, they were running. Their offensive line was establishing dominance in the trenches, allowing Carter to be successful at play action in the pass game to open up. So maybe he doesn't play as many snaps against New Orleans because we're focused on shutting down that run game and causing Derek Carr to beat us, like CJ said. But then you go ahead and play a team like Tampa, where you're not really worried about Rashad White or Bucky Irving, but you're more so worried about Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So maybe he's unleashed on the edge a little bit more. So I think situationally, game-to-game basis, that's what you're going to do. I think that's what Fangio's philosophy is, right? Whatever works, that's what we're going to roll with.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I love hearing that because that's like it kind of goes into what Chris was saying. It's the simple fact of if we're going to play a matchup, we don't care how much money you make. If you're not the right player for this specific situation, you will just be in your role, and that's no matter what money you make, you should be in your role. And I love that. I love that idea.
Yeah.
I think it's almost a little more performance based than anything else. Like regardless of game plan, like, week one, he was talking about, well, he's just going to have to separate himself from some of the other guys if he wants playing time. And what do we see? We see Brandon Graham playing better than any of the edges we've got. He gets 35 snaps this week. You get Nolan Smith is playing better and better each and every week. I don't have the snap count. Jake, you might be able to help me out.
He had 21.
21.
Three
He's
more
playing
than,
better. So
yeah,
I would expect him to be playing more than 21 snaps next week as well, or a greater percentage of those snaps. So I'm 100% for it. We talked about it after week one. If you're going to suck, you're not going to play. Regardless of how much money you're making, Vic Fangio doesn't play that. He's going to play the best player, right? Regardless of salary. He is so above and beyond worrying about the salary cap or implications. He's not your general manager. He's your DC, and he's your typical old school. I don't give a shit about anything other than what you've done for me on the field lately. And that's what we're going to see moving forward.
No, exactly. He wants the absolute best out there on the field. And if you want the absolute best taking care of you, you head on over to Delaware Orthopedic Specialist. And you see the handsome man hopping on, looking like, I don't even know, a mix between Tom McCarthy and Tom Cruise over here, wearing the nice quarter zip. Dr. Mesa from our friends over at Delaware Orthopedic Specialist, hopping on the pod tonight. Doc, how are you?
I'm great. How are you guys?
We're good.
Doing well.
Excellent.
Yeah, we're doing real well. A lot better than a number of these birds. We talked about AJ Brown last week. It's more of the same. I would kind of believe that he's going to be held out this week because they have the bye coming up. It's a shame because, I mean, you have to rely on Jalen Hurts to have another great game passing, which other than a few forced plays, he really did. Devontae Smith, he went down with an incredibly dirty hit. Yeah. No clue how it wasn't a penalty on the field, an ejection. And am I correct? He wasn't even fined. The player wasn't even fined for that hit.
I don't think we know yet if it will happen yet or not.
I know they announced the Ravens player faces suspension. He has a 1-game suspension, and we have yet to hear anything come out about. I don't even know his name, and I don't even care who the hell he is. The Saints showed us who they were on a number of different plays. But either way, Devontae Smith goes down, ruled out for the remainder of the game. I'm guessing for a concussion. Mm-hmm. But you hear that he was running into the locker room, wanted to get cleared as soon as possible to get back out onto the field to play as soon as he could. They end up ruling him out. With him showing that energy, seemingly being himself, is that a positive sign, or is it something that, with concussions, there's so much unknown that it really depends how he feels today, tomorrow, the next day to really determine whether there's any realistic chance that he'll be out there on Sunday?
I mean, watching that hit, obviously multiple times, to me, it looked more like a body blow than anything else. And I don't think, his helmet went off, but it didn't seem like he he obviously took a huge hit. But the fact that he was so resilient, I think that they just ruled him out basically because of the ferocity of that hit. Yeah. And it's going to take, if he is truly diagnosed, it's going to take him a week to recover. So if he comes in, no symptoms, everything's good, then there is a possibility he may play on Sunday. But he'd have to come in almost perfect today to be considering that. And I don't know his status as of now, but and same with Lane Johnson. I mean, if they come in, they've got to be basically a week symptom free before they're going to let him have contact at that level. So hopefully they come in. I mean, I think you may be looking at, probably Lane waiting till after the bye. I didn't really see his hit. I don't see what happened with him, but I think Devontae, if he was as chipper as he sounded or looked, he may be a possibility.
Chris, I know we were talking a little pre-show about Lane Johnson. You got a question for Doc specifically about our star bookend?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on it there, Doc. I mean, to Jake's point, right? So you got Devonta running into the locker room, Lane Johnson puking on the sideline.
Yeah.
So obviously, you think based on what you said about the bye week, his might be a little bit longer, or what are you thinking there in contrast?
Yeah, it depends on not to be crass, but it depends on why he's puking. I mean, you can puke for multiple reasons. Obviously, if you're out there, you're running, you take a shot, you're going to throw up. If it is induced, nausea, vomiting from a concussion, that's a severe sign, and that's not a good one. That's going to take some time. So really, you evaluate him the day of, you evaluate him daily, and kind of see where he is. So I don't know how much information they divulge, but if that was truly from the blow, the concussion, you're looking at least 2 weeks, in my opinion.
Well, Doc, I actually heard they flew back on the team plane with the team. Does that's a good sign to me, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if they got back on the plane, that's good. I mean, you don't want to take somebody that's super damaged on the on the flight back. So I think but the problem is there's a difference between that and being completely symptom free. Just the fact they got them on the plane is good, but that doesn't mean they're not going to have symptoms. And it could be something as simple as a headache that they're going to keep them out for.
Right.
Because the thing that worry about is concussions is that second injury. That's the bad one. So you really want to make sure they're 100%, especially early on in this sort of campaign, and you have a bye week coming.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, selfishly, we want to see him out there. We want to see him performing, especially with the amount of injuries that we have specifically on the wide receiver position.
Yep.
I mean, Fred Johnson went out there and performed wonderfully. I mean, you wouldn't have thought that anybody had missed a beat. You'd have thought that Lane Johnson just got a real good tan. I mean, it was incredible how well he was playing out there. But you're seeing a lot of things more so on the skill position side, with relying so heavily on Dallas Goedert, with relying so heavily on Saquon Barkley. Coach, I know you were bringing up your boy Britton Covey. You got a question for Doc about him being on IR today? Excuse me.
Yeah, Doc, I mean, obviously it seems like the whole team is dead, right? Like everybody on the Eagles at some point. We talked about the guys stepping up admirably, but with Britton Covey and that shoulder, if it's not like a collarbone or a separation, does he have like some broken bones in like the shoulder blade, or what could be keeping him out with that shoulder to go, to miss a month, potentially more?
Well, I mean, sometimes you can have a fracture. I remember back in the day, Zach Ertz had a fracture of his acromion, which is a rare injury, but it'll keep you out for about a month. A scapular injury. I don't know specifics about what he had, but even some AC sprains they keep out. But for a month is a bit extreme for that type of injury. I would suspect if that was the case, they'd probably, treat him medically for a week or so and get him back out there. So there probably is a more significant injury. He could have a subtle fracture. I don't know, but that's what you're looking at when you're looking at 4 weeks.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to find more about his injury. I just see that he has a shoulder injury. He's placed on IR. No idea if it's rotator cuff, if it's muscular, skeletal, anything like that. So that I'm sure will come. And then once we get something a little more specific, I'm sure we'll have you back on to give your thoughts on what that kind of recovery is going to be looking like, and so on and so forth. CJ Gardner Johnson was out most practices, and I believe he was limited on Friday with a hand injury, and then goes on to play 100% of the snaps, played every defensive snap. Is that something that you think he toughed through it, or do you think, the fact that he was able to go out there and play 100% of the snaps means that he's good to go, barring any new injury?
No, I think he went through. I was almost positive he was going to play in that game against New Orleans, but I think that, if he able to play all the snaps and play at a high level like he did, I think he's good. I mean, I think hand injuries in a lot of ways you can kind of work around, either by taping or, whatever. But if he played the way he played and hit the way he hit, I don't see any reason why he's going to be restricted going forward.
I think it was a foot, though.
Oh, was it a foot?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a hand. I don't know what I was thinking.
I'm pretty sure he was on the injury report with a foot.
That's
Isaiah Rodgers had the hand earlier in the season, but I think it was his foot.
Yeah, I must have mixed up Isaiah Rodgers and him there. My apologies.
I mean,
same
thing either way, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's running around, he's hitting guys, he's a great fourth down stop. I mean, he's able to play, he's able to push off. And he was obviously fired up. So that's even more convincing to me that if he played at that level with his foot, that's more impressive than playing it with his hand. So I think he's good.
Yeah, I must have mixed up Johnny Wilson and him, because Johnny Wilson has feet for hands. So I must have gotten that a little bit confused there. My apologies, everyone. No, I mean,
I got a random one. I got a
Yeah,
random
go
one, Jake. And we talked about this guy before, Doc. And I think you said you drafted him, Christian McCaffrey. There's
Yes.
reports that he's going to
Yes.
Germany to see a specialist.
Yes.
Is the severity of this? Are we talking? I know we touched on it a couple episodes ago. Are we talking potential Achilles full-on tear at this point if it gets worse, or what is this tendonitis of the Achilles that's so crazy that he has to go see someone outside the country?
Well, I think if you guys remember when Covey tore his Achilles, he went to Europe to have it treated. And I think they do things in Europe that maybe not totally FDA approved in the United States. So there may be some alternative treatments that have been done. Notoriously, athletes go, Joel Embiid went to God knows where to get his foot fixed. So I think it's a
rubbing baby seal blood on his calf.
exactly. I mean, there are things that we don't condone here necessarily, and it's not saying it's a bad thing. I just think some of these treatments are on the cutting edge, and we just, in the United States, we probably require a little bit more approval before we release them to the public. And I think that's where he's going. I think he's looking at something more of a stem cell type treatment, something where you can kind of stimulate healing. I think the worry is if he doesn't do this and goes out there, the fear is he's going to rupture his Achilles, and then he's going to be out for the season and, maybe for longer. And I think someone like him, who's a tremendous athlete, put a lot of miles on those tires, I'm sure his Achilles has a significant tendinopathy. And the concern is, well, he's feeling better. Do we push him and risk having a rupture? So I think I think he's trying to cover all his bases and seeing what other options there are available to him.
I know the NFL is different than, other leagues and everything like that. And I'm going to word this really incorrectly, but doesn't the team basically own you? Like, can you go somewhere outside of team, like, and get a surgery on your own? That's got to be against contractual. Like, am I crazy for thinking that?
I'm sure he got signed off by the team.
You have
to do it.
I think a lot of times it's the agents that really own you. So I've seen patients, Carson Wentz, perfect example. He tore his knee. Where did he have his surgery? In Pittsburgh. I think a lot of people have affiliations with certain doctors in certain areas. I mean, Jimmy Andrews has made a living off people from other teams coming to see him.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And I think that's what happens. They say, okay, if you're confident in the doctor, sure, you can go with the doctor. But I think there's this sort of level of comfort. And I think a lot of guys, honestly, a lot of pro athletes go to where they went in college. They trust their team doctors there. They were with them for years. I saw it when I was in Miami. A lot of professional athletes would come down and see the doctor I worked for because they knew him from the U and were happy and were comfortable with him treating them. And it happens all the time. Shout out to the U. But I think there's a lot of people that's the athletes, especially they don't want to think that they're getting the doctor that's forced upon them by the team oftentimes. Yeah. So they want somebody who in their mind or their agent's mind has their best interest at heart. That's why they all seek second opinions. They all go around. I mean, baseball, it's very rare for anybody to not get their UCL done either by Jimmy Andrews or Ella Trash in LA. That's who you hear all the time.
Dr. James Andrews, right? That's who you're talking about?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, he does all the. I remember as like a kid, I looked up to him for being like the NFL surgery guy. He was the guy.
Yep.
And I guess that's why, Chris Maragos, didn't he?
He went to Pittsburgh. He had his surgery at Pittsburgh with the same doctor that did Carson Wentz's knee.
I'll tell you, Doc is on it.
Yes. Oh, this I know. This is my
look at Docs and that was an Eagles doc, right? That was a doc.
No. The Eagles doc was part of the diagnosis because they did a surgery and then there was a meniscal tear that was not treated at the time. So it was not only the Eagles docs, but it was also a doctor in Pittsburgh. There were two involved in the lawsuit.
Yeah, it was on 347 Maple Lane, Suite 100. His surgery was at 2:45 p.m. on a Thursday. It was slightly overcast, but he had ice cream Haagen-Dazs after the surgery. It was great success.
Doc, I don't know if this is too intrusive of a question, so please feel free to tell me it is. But have you ever done surgery on an NFL player?
Not with my own credit card. I did it as a fellow, but I never did it on my own. So, I mean, the risk is the risk. I mean, you're talking about future earnings, and if you need to have super insurance to do this. That's why most athletes go to places that are affiliated with a university or a hospital because they have deeper pockets. So it would be crazy for you to consider, in my opinion, taking care of professional athletes if you are not backed up by some major institution.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I guess that was
Yeah.
a really good question because that's information. You learn something new every day on Talking 215. Come on, no one knew that.
You don't get better medical news than here on Talking 215.
No, and I want to talk about that specifically, Doc. I'm not going to name names, name organizations or anything. I was listening to a 3-letter radio station about Philadelphia sports, and they had a doctor on, and he was so bad. It was just so bad listening to the update he provided.
Yep.
I'm like, the information could have been fine, but the delivery was terrible. It was just kind of like haphazardly, just barely gave the basic, just surface level stuff. And they were just like, oh, thank you so much, Mr. So-and-so from so-and-so, so-and-so. I'll tell you, this guy's, and I'm like, this guy he can't even hold Dr. Mace's jock strap. Like, this guy stinks.
That's true.
Dr. Mace is running circles around this guy on Talking 215. I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of these guys, it's a way to get your name out there. So they'll volunteer to do a spot on the radio or what have you to do it. And, in all fairness, they are volunteering their time. But, we're not all meant for radio and podcasts and stuff.
No.
So, I mean,
No,
of the
you
best
got the face for the video, you got the voice for the podcast. This guy was asked about AJ Brown. He was like, well, everyone has a hamstring, and sometimes it's hard.
And you kind of want to be vanilla. You don't want to go out there and say something, too controversial, because
this guy wasn't vanilla. This guy was the
cardboard
paste.
Yeah.
He was the vanilla without he was the paste.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's just you just want to try to relay the information. Like I said, sometimes the best doctors are not the best personalities, but that doesn't reflect.
And then you get lucky and you get Dr. Mason.
That's true.
Yeah, exactly. The George Clooney of doctors.
There you
Seriously, is that a fresh cut?
Yeah, I got a shave for this.
Yeah.
It's a season cut.
I mean, come on, he's a pro, Jake. What do you think?
Yeah,
he's a
come
pro.
on.
I'm rocking my Phillies mullet. I got my Phillies
you think
mullet.
he just comes onto the show with a mullet or cut off sleeves? Like, Doc's a pro. Okay,
yeah, there you go.
I'm not shaving this mullet until the Phillies get bounced, by the way. So,
oh, jeez. God bless you. It's looking good, though.
Yeah, it's coming in. It's coming in all right.
I like it.
No, I appreciate it, Doc. No, so really, really appreciate the time. Obviously, you guys you see his face on YouTube, you hear his voice on Spotify, Apple, whatever you listen, and you hear the just incredible wealth of knowledge that he possesses. So when you or a loved one or anyone suffers any kind of injury, illness, anything that you might need a specialist for, why would you trust anyone other than a specialist? The only fellowship trained surgery center here in the state of Delaware, locations all throughout the area. Head on over to delaortho.com or give them a call, 302-655-9494. Let them know that Talking 215 sent you. Doc, and let's get a round of applause for the Doc. I mean, all-star performance today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by Bucket Golf. I am sick and tired of spending so much money to go play courses that really aren't even that good a shape and go put my Sunday best on just to get swamp ass and look like an idiot by the end of the day. That's where Bucket Golf comes in. In 3, 6, 9, and 18 hole sets, you can convert any backyard, any field, any park, anything really in general into your own personal golf course. You see us playing it down at Citizens Bank Park, and you're going to see us playing it a whole lot more this winter. Head on over to their website, bucketgolfgame.com. Use promo code TALKIN215. Give them a great review and have the time of your life playing a game that we all love, but now stress-free with a beer in your hand, and it's not costing you an arm and a leg to play. Bucket Golf. Let's play, folks.
Jake, excellent read there, by the way, too.
Yeah, other than some flubs. Little flubby.
Decent.
Little flubby. I'll give it a 7. 7.2.
Only because we've heard your 10s and your 10s.
I felt the transition into the segment was elite.
Yes, that we can say that on live air, and if anyone's listening, that was an elite transition.
Elite transition. No, for
Great
sure.
hips.
Oh yeah, flipped the hips real well. Look, we kind of got off the Phillies, and I want to get back to them at the very end. We're sticking here with the Birds, though. let's be honest. Like, this was, aside from coaching, which I want to get into next, this was a domination. The Eagles dominated this game in every aspect except for the score. And again, that kind of falls on a few Jalen Hurts forced plays, a few Jalen Hurts blunders. Overall, we're going to get into him. He played what I thought was one of his best passing games in a while, other than, again, a few forced plays. But aside from coaching, this was a domination. You're talking about 460 yards to 230 yards. You're talking about a defense that's holding the number one offense in the NFL to 12 points. You're just talking about an ass whooping on every aspect of the game other than the score. Don't all speak at once.
I'm not entirely sure how we can separate everything from coaching, right? I don't know how we can just totally completely discredit coaching when we whip that ass in just about every major facet of the game. I really think it's just 3 weeks into the season, every single team is still trying to figure out who it is, its identity, and most importantly, how good they are, right?
Yeah, I mean, Brian Dawkins said it this week. The September is now the new August of football.
Mm-hmm. It's been that way for
3
a
weeks
while.
and we don't know what kind of team we have. We don't know who we're going up against. We thought the Saints was the most impressive offense in the NFL. And you take a look at this roster and you're going,
up until Sunday, they were.
There's no way over the course of 17 games, this team is going to be the number one offense in the NFL. They just had two good games, right? So we're all still trying to figure out who the Eagles are at this point, right? Are we a run-first offense? What kind of defense is this team going to be known for? Because it's been two completely different defenses, right, so far. What's the identity of this offense? Bottom line is we still don't have much of a clue. And these expectations coming into these games are based on incredibly limited information.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember when I said it the other week, I think last week sometime, they're trying to dip back into last season to figure out what we are. You're 2-3 and 8, 3 and 7, whatever. No, we're 2-1. Like this, that's what we are. So yeah, and it's a very small sample. And you're right, Sean. I don't think that the Saints are going to end up being some juggernaut team. I think they're a tough team. Every game's tough in the NFL, and the spot matters, and where you play matters. But it's so early; it's hard to say who anyone is. And I think the Eagles should get a little bit of that same grace. At the same time, I do think there are some things they need to clean up. And it seems like it's new things every week. So maybe we're like, okay, we got this covered, and then we're trying to move on to the next thing. And at the end of the day, it's just about continuing to iron out the wrinkles. And the wrinkles right now to me are the Hurts decision-making and the Sirianni decision-making when we have a chance to get points on the board early in games. Really, really specific, but that's my big thing right now. Just get points.
Yeah.
No, Saints played the Panthers week 1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then they beat the brakes off the Cowboys
in Dallas.
But then the Panthers just looked really good with Darnold at quarterback all of a sudden against whoever. Didn't they beat? What was it?
They beat the Raiders.
Was it? The Raiders. And then the Vikings beat Houston. And you're like, the Vikings are 3-0. So it's just it's wild. It's wild out.
And the Cowboys look like they genuinely suck.
Yeah.
Right? They look like they don't have a chance in hell against anybody.
Everyone talking about our run defense and our defense in general, but the Cowboys defense looks like one of the worst in the league right now. They're getting pulverized.
Yeah, I look at it. Like, Tommy, you say it all the time on Twitter. You're like, it's hard to win in the NFL, right? Like, don't take wins for granted. Don't take matchups for granted. It's hard to win in the NFL. And one of the dumbass things I always do on a lot of episodes is I say, if you would have told me, if I would have gone back a week ago, and if you would have told me, well, think about it. If you would have told me that no A.J. Brown, no Devontae Smith, no Lane Johnson, no Mekhi Becton, a little bit of no Slay, Jalen Hurts throws another interception in the end zone. We don't go for it. We don't get it on fourth down. Jake Elliott misses a field goal, and they block our punt. Oh, yeah, but we put up over 500 yards of offense, and we won in New Orleans. You'd be like, on what planet? On what planet did we win?
How did that happen? And then we won a low-scoring game.
And we only get one takeaway.
I mean, the re-blankenship at the end, but
yeah,
I mean,
that doesn't even allow us to then go put points on.
I count a fourth down stop or like a
Yeah.
turnover on downs as a quote unquote turnover. And guys, what I think is the most impressive thing to me, and you guys were talking about how dominant the defensive line was, the interior, Fangio, all this stuff. But to me, it wasn't just holding them to 12 points. The block punt, they're already in field goal range. The fumble by Jalen Hurts, they're already on our side of the 50. The 2 long runs that they had, they're already on our side of the 50 in scoring range. Like, it's not like our defense was like, all right, stop them from going 93 yards. No, our defense was like, damn, we're already up against our backs against the wall here, and we got to buckle down. So to do it the way they did on the road and coming into this year, I ask everybody on this podcast, you asked me the same thing. What's the biggest positional weakness on this team? We all said linebacker. And now I'm like, Kobe Dean and Zach Bond, I'll put these 2 sons of bitches up against any linebacker.
Kobe Dean was buzzing. Right now. He was buzzing out there.
Like both of them, man. I mean, it's just a beautiful thing to see. And I don't think we realize how great of a defensive performance that was at the end of the day. It was exceptional.
Oh, yeah.
No kidding. No, I mean, look, you got guys like Thomas Booker going out there. He played 8 snaps last week, 10 snaps this week. You talk about a guy deserving more snaps and earning more snaps. This guy, anytime he's out there, you're hearing his name. Big pass defense this week, just busting it down the field, doing all kinds of things. I mean, there's what one player on defense do you feel like really got picked on? I'm looking at the whole defensive snap count, and I'm like, I mean, yeah, you might have not heard somebody's name where they didn't go out there and make a big splash play, but there was really no point where you're like, damn it, Josh Sweat again gave up the edge and let Bijan Robinson get 20 yards. Damn it, Moro Ajomu, what's he doing in there? Get Jordan Davis back out there. Get Jalen Carter back out there. Like, there's nobody that you really felt got picked on other than when Slay got taken out and they were like, all right, we're going to go after Keely Ringo back-to-back plays.
Right. I was going to say that. Yep.
Yeah,
and then Sean posed an interesting point on Twitter that I wanted to bring up. The touchdown they had where CJ Gardner Johnson just looked like he was like, whatever. Sean was like, it almost looked like they let him score to give us more time to go down and have the ball. I was kind of like, you never let somebody score unless it's one of those clear cut, you need the ball back to have any kind of chance whatsoever, where obviously if they stopped in there, they still win the game. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Because watching it again, watching replays, he made one move and CJ was just like, nah, you can have it.
I think he got beat. I think he just got beat.
And do you think he got beat so bad that he was just like, it's not even worth, like, he's got 5 yards on me. Why would I even run after him?
Probably, yeah. I think he was pissed. I think the Saints called a really good play. I thought that.
Yeah, I mean, CJ's his own guy. He's not a man guy.
No, yeah, he can come down and play in the nickel a little bit. But I mean, it was Olave, right? I mean, that guy's just like nuts. You can't just let him like run into the middle of the field and just have one guy back there. Like you're basically guessing. So, but I do want to take the opportunity to flip this real quick to the great play he made against Shaheed when Shaheed caught the ball basically on the ground and he somehow avoided touching him and punched the ball out. That was phenomenal. So I kind of forgave him because he's such such an up and down kind of emotional player, and he'll give up some, but he's a fun guy to have on the team, and I'm glad he's back. But yeah, no, I just think he got beat and was like, you got me.
Yeah.
I think it was the one time you saw the Eagles defense kind of misaligned, because there's no defensive call that Fangio would do where their best receiver gets a free release to the safety in a man-to-man defense. And on top of that, inside the tight red zone, you're not having your safety in the middle of the field chase all the way to a corner on a 7 route. That's never going to be the defensive call ever. So I think there was either a confusion pre-snap, or maybe CJ was trying to get guys lined up, and by the time Olave got a free release, he's like, shit, he's on me. And to your point, it's kind of like, I'm not running all the way out to that corner of the 7 route. I'm supposed to be safety in the middle of the field. I just think it was a whole bunch of that, and they just caught us at a bad time, honestly.
Listen, I don't have any proof of it. I just saw that it was much to what you just mentioned, Coach. This team has looked awesome in the red zone for the last couple games, right? They've looked rock solid when it comes down to crunch time. And when he scored, I just thought, well, it was wide open, and that's the most convenient time they could have scored. Like, if they were going to, it was right.
Let them do it right away.
Right. So it was almost like, I was like upset when the ball was in the air, and then shortly afterwards, I was like, huh, you know what? If they did that on purpose, like I wouldn't even be that upset about it.
Yeah, makes sense.
I just don't think Fangio is that type of guy.
Yeah,
I think
Yeah,
he's so old
I have
school.
no
Probably
proof.
not.
That was just my thought process in the
Yeah.
heat of the moment.
There's certain times when that would make sense, honestly.
No, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
I mean, we got burnt for clock management last week, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, it could be just trying out some different things. You know, it's not like Sirianni tried to any different things. He certainly went
No,
for it
we're the same shit every
unsuccessfully on
time.
fourth down. Is this just the way is this like league wide where we're just seeing a lot of these analytic types that normally would go for it on fourth down all of a sudden just crashing and burning?
It's funny. I was gonna say it's funny that analytics even comes up. I swear every stat always just says go for it now. Like it's just like 99 times out of the last 100 this happened, and the coach was wearing black shoes, and the sun was on that side.
ESPN Advanced Analytics say it's a slight green. You got to go for it here.
Yeah, it's like every single time. To be honest, somebody made a really good point and said that Sirianni's only. I don't see. The thing is, I don't remember who said it. So if it was someone on here, please speak up. But someone said Sirianni's only real control over anything is that decision. So of course he wants to put like his fingerprints on the game somehow and be the hero, and that's getting us killed because you could be the hero if the team just wins. That's it. Everyone loves him.
If that's your only decision, it better be the best one you got.
Yeah, exactly.
What just seemed like for the last couple of years, the analytics say go for it, and the results have kind of panned out. It seems like if there's a 70-30 split, that it's actually going to be favorable. Being aggressive has shown to work over the last couple of seasons, but it's just that it kind of ties into now it feels like it's more of a running league, right? We've ran more now. The average yards per game throughout the air is the lowest it's been since 1992. Right. So is it just coincided that this aggression is also kind of returning to baseline along with just the passing game as a whole?
Possibly.
This is my take on the whole analytics thing is analytics can come into play. So can using your gut. Both come into play. This is what I want to do. I was on Twitter bashing Dan Campbell for basically self-sabotaging the Detroit Lions against the San Francisco 49ers by not kicking a field goal 3 times and coming away with 0 points. I mean, field goals on the road. I always have a rule. My coaches did. You don't chase on the road. You don't chase points on the road. You could do it at home where you have the advantage of the crowd, your comfortability. This is a place you always play. You don't have to worry about time zones, waking up in a hotel. But on the road where things go crazy, you don't chase points. You take the points. But here's my biggest issue with the Sirianni thing is when using analytics versus your gut. It's not always going to make this be the same depending on if it's a goal-to-go situation right before the half or right before the fourth quarter's over, the game's over. The Saquon call, the fake tush push, even if he gets that, you're kicking a field goal on the next down anyway, and it's a yard difference because you have to call a timeout with maybe 9, maybe 8 seconds left, somewhere around there. Do you really trust Jalen Hurts with no A.J. Brown to take one shot at the end zone? If you don't get it, you come away with no points? No, you're probably kicking the field goal anyway. So do I trust the Eagles to always go for it on 4th and 1? Absolutely. Saquon, Dallas Goedert, Smitty, AJ, go for it every time. But if the result based on the clock in the game is going to mean you have to kick a field goal anyway, then what are we doing?
Yeah, no,
that's what doesn't make sense.
You do that tricky tush push thing if it was 3rd down. If it's 3rd down there and you're like,
or if there's 20 or 30 seconds left as opposed to 10.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I think specifically 3rd down because it's like, all right, if we get it and there's a chance that he can bust it here, like tush push, you're guaranteed 1.5 yards. That if they really bite on it and you do that reverse or whatever you want to call it, there's a chance that he could bust it. You know what I mean? And if he doesn't get it on 3rd down, you then call a timeout and you kick the field goal. 4th down, it just doesn't make any sense because if they don't bite on the tush push, you see what happens. You don't get the yards. And you end up losing the ball and losing out on the opportunity.
I will say that play possibly could have scored, but you'll never guess who got blown up on that block. You just won't.
Landon.
No. Who did y'all compare to Stubbs?
Britten Covey.
Calcaterra.
Why is he out there on a blocking play?
Why is he blocking?
Thrown. He got thrown like Mozzie Smith on a double team. He just got launched on that play, and Saquon had nowhere to go. But if somebody else holds that block, it might actually be.
Jackson was activated to the active roster, and I think he's going to take over the tight end 2 spot.
Yeah, especially if you're not targeting your tight end 2, but once every 2 games.
Yeah. Chris, I need your thoughts on this. You're not talking enough. You're finally back here. I'm sorry, Tom.
I know. There's so much good going here. I don't want to interrupt. No, I just like I think Joey's right. It's situational, right? Like, forget analytics. I don't even know what that does for Sirianni in a moment's notice. I don't think it does shit. But situationally, you kick the field goal when there's 12 seconds left before heading into the 10, 12, whatever it was, before heading into the half. You take those points and you thank God that you got them for the half. That's just where I'm at. Yeah. Like, that was situation. Like, I love how aggressive we can be because I love the tush push, and I think we can pick up that 2 yards when we need it. But you got to play smart football, and that was not smart football.
No, you're absolutely. It reminded me when Doug started losing his mind, and there was a game we scored a touchdown to make it 21-17. We were down against the Giants, and he went for 2. To make it 21-19 instead, but we missed it. So it was still 21-17. I promise if you go back and look this up,
you're on it, man. You're always dead on with these things.
I might repost it on Twitter tomorrow because that same exact, I'm like, this literally doesn't make sense to even go for the forget about the fact that they failed the thing. It literally wouldn't have mattered if they
21-18 is a 3-point game.
It's right. So, but yeah, it just it made the going for it made no sense. And like Joey said earlier in his little segment that he was talking about everything. He said something that really resonated with me. Like, don't chase points on the road. Like, I'm an old school mentality too. I grew up on that early 2000s football, and I promise no one was doing this crap. And the stuff they were doing back then worked. Like, you get points early, and then you score a touchdown. Now it's 13. Now you have 13. Now it's 13-3 Eagles, and we don't have to sweat it out at the end and get some crazy play. But, I could rant about that all day, man. It really bothers me that they do this new age, go for it every time, play Madden. And I hate the people on Twitter that think it's a great idea every single time. And they're like, hey, he's gutsy and all that. I don't like the Dan Campbell example is a perfect example. It's like, dude, if you just reward your team for getting down there, you're winning the game. You don't need to try to be the hero. And if there's a reason that football is what it is and how it's becoming, I just don't think the 4th down thing is. I don't like it. I just hate it.
Let me ask you guys that bet. You guys bet, right?
Yeah.
Do you know how many? Do you know the age old what they say? How many points do you get for being the whole home team? So, like, if you see the home team's -3, Jake is right. You get 3 points. So if you're a home team and the game is -3, it's basically saying it would be even on a neutral field. We can all agree on that, right? That's just they say so. Home field in bettors' eyes and Vegas's eyes is worth 3 points. And if you listen to Bill Parcells and some of the things he used to say on coaching and trends, he used to say, if a team is up by 1 point, they will call any and everything in the playbook. The second that game is tied or they're losing by 1, even if they're only losing by 1 point, they get so conservative, believe it or not. Teams panic. They do things they wouldn't normally do, either tied or with a lead. So that's why I'm saying that little 3 points. You take that 3 points going into halftime, and all of a sudden the Saints are coming out, man, we felt like we dominated that half, and it's 3-3, as opposed to, we're up 3-0. We just need 1 touchdown to make this a 2-score game. Your philosophy changes. I'm not saying the players play different. I'm not saying these things happen, but it's little psychological stuff like that matters. And taking the points on the road matters.
Yep. And going into like you said, locker room tied. It's like, wow. And then, but going in the locker room down 3-0, I was like, we could have had points. We could be up right now, or at least be tied, and we're not. And it's little psychological things that you can't measure through. Well, 99 out of 121 times, like analytics BS.
And then the one kick he goes for is thinking with the ice cold Jake Elliott from 60 yards.
Right.
Like, we love Jake Elliott. Too. The guy's never had an opportunity to kick any. He doesn't even kick the kickoffs anymore.
Right.
So he's kicking point after attempts. And at that point in the game, he hadn't done anything. He's just sitting there twiddling his thumbs. They're like, all right, 4, get out there, 60 yards, go do it. Like,
Yeah.
screw you, coach.
And he's not good enough to kick a 43-yarder, but if it's 60, get out there, Jake.
Yeah.
Get out there. Now's the time.
All right.
All this talk about analytics. All this talk about analytics makes me think, like, is someone running over to Nick, like, with an Excel spreadsheet, like, look, the analytics say we gotta go for this one. Like, come on, look, it's right here. Like, it's bonkers. But
no, I mean, they have a whole analytics department. Like, they've made a big note of it, that they have an entire department devoted to it. But two things.
What do baseball managers do when they're about to do it? They do this. They're like,
oh yeah, exactly. Managers.
Yeah, we're gonna go for it.
Yeah. No, exactly. No, 2 things before we wrap it up, though. Sean, I think you need either. I don't even know where we left it off. Do you need to either apologize to Dallas Goedert, or do you need to say you're welcome for Dallas Goedert? Like, resurging, if it was Coach, he'd probably say you're welcome. He'd probably like, I knew exactly what I was doing. If it's Sean, I don't know if we need an apology. And then we asked who's a closer on this team, and we found that out. But Sean, I'll leave it up into your hands. Do you need to apologize to Dallas, or is this more of a everybody in Philly needs to say thank you to you?
Okay, first off, I always apologize when I'm wrong, but fortunately for the listeners on Talkin 215, I have yet to be wrong. Okay. What I had mentioned that Dallas Goedert might as well not be on the team if we're going to be paying this much to not have him included in the game plan. So what do? They remembered that Dallas Goedert was that guy. Okay.
How many
Dallas Goedert has the ability to take over a game if you so choose to. Okay. AJ Brown had to go down. Smitty had to have a brain injury in order to do so. Actually, regardless of whether or not he did, because he was tearing it up throughout that entire game. Okay. Dallas Goedert is the man. It just sucks to see him sit around in his tiny little 3-point stance where he gets all the way down, ass to ankles. Okay. Trying to be as little as possible, okay, only to do jack shit, okay? We're paying the guy $8 million a year. He has all the talent in the world to be a top 3 tight end, and at this point, probably 2, maybe even number 1, if the game plan allowed for it. And it was about damn time that this coaching staff remembered that Dallas freaking Goedert was on this team. No Grant Calcaterra, okay? No Jack Stoll nonsense. We have a guy, and we're going to use him, and he's going to be a matchup nightmare for whoever we put against him. The man's got just about the most natural hands on the team. Maybe Devontae, you can put 1A, 1B, but the guy's a gifted route runner. The guy's fantastic with the ball in his hands, and he's the most natural catcher we have on this team. And coming into this game, he was averaging 36 receiving yards per game. Okay. Now coming out of week 3, he is your number 1 tight end in the NFL in reception yards by about 40 yards. Okay. So it's no coincidence. The guy can take over a game if he wants. Let him every opportunity we can. Okay. I don't know if you guys thought the matchups weren't great the first couple weeks. I know week 1, the field was a little crazy. I'd expect a bigger guy to have a little more grounding though. Okay. Finally, our offensive coordinator said, wait a second, we got a guy over here. Let's forget about whether or not Devontae has a good matchup on the outside against the number 1 cornerback on the opposing team. We have a nightmare lining up a tight end right now, and we're going to use him, God damn it.
Clip it, Dan.
So was that an apology? Was that an apology, or what was?
I'm not sorry for shit. Okay, I speak the truth that shall set men free. Okay, and what you saw was Dallas Goedert running free. Okay, unload the trailer.
That was beautiful.
Unhook the trailer. Only problem was he's too damn slow.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Gentlemen, we saw the closer, Reed Blankenship. I got to go play some damn basketball. Final thoughts, everybody. Chris, you were dead on with the April 9th final thought. That might have been your last final thought.
I know. It was legitimately my final thought. No, man. I was supposed to go to Tampa for this game this weekend. In fact, I still have the tickets, but the hurricane is coming. I'm going to talk to coach about that. But I think we beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I think it's on the ground. I think it's a Saquon Barkley day. I don't think it's a passing day for Jalen, unfortunately. I think Barkley scores 2, maybe 3. That's my final thought.
Coach?
I normally have a hierarchy of teams that I hate. You all know number 1 is the Cowboys. Number 2 is the 49ers. And for some weird reason, when we talked on this podcast, number 3 has been the Saints for me. It's always been the Saints. I've never liked that team, no matter what regime was there, what players were there, what coaches were there, anything. And coming out of that game only solidifies them as a top 3 hated team for me after the dirty plays, the dirty hits, the trash talking after the game. There's a reason Jalen Carter was so fired up too. The Trevor Penning play, I think, was just disgusting. Saquon Barkley on the 2-point conversion, you don't see, but they're twisting his leg as he's laying on the ground. Saquon Barkley is, and he got up a little bit mad. And we all know the Smitty play, okay? And then whatever fired Jalen Carter up too. So I think my final thought is just fuck the Saints.
Tom?
I'm kind of in the same boat as Chris. I had tickets to the Tampa game, had to cancel my trip. Still going to be supporting from home, but I'm kind of still on Coach's vibe too, where I'm smoking on that Saints pack. Huge win in New Orleans, and still digesting that one. So we'll start to think about the Bucs later in the week and see who we have healthy and up to go. But till then, I can't really give much thoughts on it till we see.
Fair enough. Sean?
You know what, man? My final thought comes into a topic we really didn't get a chance to chat about until these last minute or so. Listen, my final thought is this team needs to keep that bodyguard type of attitude where if somebody does something dirty to your teammate, you need to fight them. You need to be the one to respond and have that attitude. I don't care about 15 yards here and there. If it's because there was a cheap shot on your stud cornerback, you need to go over there and punch somebody in the mouth. Okay? My final thought is to back up your damn teammates.
I love that. No, I was pissed all game, just like, because you saw the last time they played the Saints, Mailata was throwing motherfuckers. He was pissed.
I just couldn't believe after
shit, and he wasn't having it.
Listen, that the Devontae hit, I thought the refs had more to do with that than anything.
Agreed.
Okay, I thought that was their fault. You know, you play until the whistle blows. I didn't like that it was a 300-pound defensive lineman. That was more bad luck than anything, especially when the replay showed it was a shoulder-to-shoulder hit, okay? The spitting on him, I'm not entirely sold it was on purpose onto Devontae.
I agree.
Right? I'm not 1,000. I'm like, it looks bad, but also everything looks bad when you slow it down and zoom it in, right? But that Trevor Penning shot, right? Taking a guy that's 100 pounds lighter than you and throwing him into your coach that's already 8 yards off the sideline, that guy needed to get punched in the mouth. And I was upset, not at Jalen for mouthing off after the game. I wanted him to go fight him immediately after. I wanted that broadcast to have to go to commercial break because my defensive tackle stuck up for his cornerback. Yes, there was going to be a 15-yard penalty, a fine. I don't care. You stick up for your teammates. He was hurt after that play on an obviously dirty team. That guy needed to go out and punch him in the mouth. Okay, I'm not condoning doing it first, but you better finish that shit.
Dan, clip that shit too. My final thought, go Birds!